for us.
Super amazing.
Yes, super amazing. All the way from New York, we have an award-winning New York Times journalist, Nikole Hannah-Jones. Welcome her to the
Yes.
show.
Give it up, give it up, give it up. Welcome aboard, welcome aboard.
Hello.
Hi, hello, how are you?
We are doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, can't complain.
Great, great. Welcome to Spotlight Over the City. We won't keep you too long. We are very, very excited about this 1619 project. I have to admit, and I'm very candid, I don't mind telling people that I really did not know a lot about this until, one, I married my husband because he's really into this. And then two, when it happened in August, I saw something from you about this project, and I said, let me see what this really is. What is this 1619 year and the 400 years and stuff? So I really had to educate myself, and I have not, again, like I told you, today I dived back into it just to refresh my memory, and I haven't been able to pull myself away. Very, very interesting project that you worked on. I want you to start by telling, because everybody doesn't know about this 1619 project. So why don't you just start by saying what led you to doing this project?
Well, August of 1619 was the 400th anniversary of the first Africans being sold into slavery in the colony of Virginia. And just like you, most Americans had never heard of the date 1619, and I knew that this really important date, what I would consider a foundational date in the American story, was going to pass with really no recognition, that most Americans were not going to acknowledge it. So the 1619 Project is a special issue of the New York Times Magazine, as well as a special section of the newspaper that ran to really assess the modern legacy of slavery and to argue that we should consider 1619 our true founding, because so much of our country and its institutions kind of begin at that moment, and that you can look across nearly every aspect of modern American life and trace these institutions and our culture and our politics, our music, back to slavery.
Wow, wow, wow. So,
Exactly. So one of the things I was excited about is because the 400 years was actually from 1619 until last August 2019, the 400 years. And so after that, I was aware that it would be a shift. And so it seemed to be a real conscious shift in the way things were happening for us as a people. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
What do you mean by a shift?
It just seems like now the energy is higher for black people, and you can kind of do things with a lot less effort, and things. In other words, God has freed up the consciousness of His people as of today. Because as of, like I said, the 400 years when slavery will be up, the Bible clearly states that things will be changed, and after the 400 years, you will be returning. And so I feel that it's a conscious state that's returning.
it's our turn.
Yeah, it's our turn, so to speak, as a people. As of last year, we seem to be really thriving fast in our communities.
What you think?
I mean, I'm not a biblical person, so I can't really speak to that. I think that clearly Black Americans have made a tremendous amount of progress, but
Yeah.
we still are at the bottom of every indicator of well-being. Everything that you can measure, we're at the bottom of those indicators. So I think it's important to both mark our progress, but also understand that Black people are still suffering under that legacy of slavery. I do firmly believe that the first step towards addressing what is the ongoing racial caste system is an acknowledgement by white Americans of what was done, and that we still live with that, and an empowerment among Black Americans of actually knowing our true story and our true history, and understanding that the conditions we live in are not of our own creation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's definitely a fact.
There was something in your in the 1619 project that I read. I think it was in the beginning where you talked about there was no American democracy until Black people. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I I created the project, but I also wrote the opening essay for the project. And my project is really showing that we're often taught that Black people contributed to this country's wealth through our labor, but I actually argue that our greatest contribution to this country has been working to turn it into a democracy. We know at the time that the Declaration was written by Thomas Jefferson, he owned 130 human beings, and that fully 1/5 of the population of the 13 colonies at the Revolution were enslaved. So clearly, we were not founded as a democracy if 1/5 of the population lived in absolute bondage. Women could not vote at that time. Most white people, unless they own land, could not vote at that time. But Black people have, through really a centuries-long struggle of resistance and efforts to expand universal rights and to actually make the founding ideals true, starting with resistance during slavery, pushing forward the Reconstruction Amendments after slavery, and of course the decades-long civil rights movement. Black people have really played a foundational role in bringing this country closer to democracy itself, even though this is not something that we get credit for. And every other rights movement, the groundwork for those movements, disability rights, gay rights, women's rights, immigration rights, Black people laid the groundwork for every other rights movement that we've seen.
Yeah, that's a fact.
That's a fact. I had a few questions that came in when people found out that you were going to call into the show today. So I'm going to go through, at least try to get to 2 or 3 of their questions. One of their questions is, and these are people who actually read the 1619 Project, obviously. Why do you think we aren't teaching slavery? Why aren't we teaching more about that?
Because to teach slavery is to acknowledge that we were founded on a fundamental hypocrisy. The way that we're taught history is to glorify American exceptionalism and to teach that America was the freest, most democratic country that the world had ever seen. But if you teach about slavery, then you have to acknowledge that that was a lie, and that we actually were not. We were founded on ideals of freedom, but the practice of slavery. So what we've had to do over the years is really marginalize slavery, to downplay slavery, to pretend that slavery was not a fundamentally American institution, that it didn't have a large impact, that it was only a handful of white Southerners who profited from slavery. And W.E.B. Du Bois called this the propaganda of history. It is really trying to downplay slavery so that we can uphold this narrative of American exceptionalism.
Okay.
So I guess my question after all of these statements are said, and all of them are really clear statements in my head. So what's the ultimate goal for the 1619 Project? Like, what would you ultimately want to see come out of the project?
Good question.
I'm a reporter, so my goal is always to provide information and to hopefully challenge people to see things differently, to understand our world in a way that we hadn't. So when I pitched and conceived of the project, my main goal was I wanted to make sure that Americans knew the year 1619 and that we were forced to confront not just that the history of slavery, but that we still live with the effects of slavery, and hope that that would force a larger reckoning. Anything else that comes out of it is a bonus, because my job was just to trouble the narrative and hopefully get us to understand our nation in a way that we haven't.
Well, I think it's a beautiful thing what you did, and I'm unaware if you were a biblical. 1619 was very important to us as a people because of the 400 years that was dictated in Scripture. And so because of that fact, 1619 was just the beginning of something really potent, that the 400 years are now even more potent because now it moves us forward, is why I asked. Yeah. We're moving forward now. Now we're 400 years are up, right? And so now we need to be educated on why the 1619 was even important from the start.
Yep.
Because from 1619 to, like I said, 2019 gave you 400 years. And so now it's time to get a new mindset, in my opinion, and start going forward and start progressing as a strong nation of Black people, and so much for the reprimand. Because if we go back to slavery in 1619, we should go a little further back when we were kings and queens, in my opinion, and talk about some of the things that got us even enslaved. So it's a big topic. 1619 is
It
very
is.
important for people to be aware of. So I would
Yes.
definitely suggest you do your homework. 1619 was where
Yes, y'all.
Jamestown ships floated in from slavery, but we were over here exchanging goods is why we were even tempted to be here, and that's a whole nother subject, so it could get deep, and I don't want to go too far into it, but I want to thank you for being a part of Spotlight and bringing some awareness to that subject, and hopefully
Yeah.
people will go off on their own and do their homework about that, and they'll get a little further education on our history.
Yeah, so for the people who have not yet read this an amazing story, how can they get a hold of a copy or read it online?
Yeah, it's pretty impossible to get a hold of copies now. We've sold out several times.
That's what I figured.
You can get it online at just Google New York Times 1619 Project. There's also a free online curriculum for educators or parents or anyone who wants to try to teach this to their children, and that's available at the Pulitzer Center. So if you Google Pulitzer Center 1619, you can get access to the online curriculum as well.
Wonderful.
Appreciate
Listen,
it.
we appreciate it so much. And if there's ever anything that Spotlight Over the City can do to help push this forward, if you're going to be doing any other, podcasts or something that you need to get the word out about 1619 Project, please don't hesitate to let us know, because we are definitely down for all of that and what you're doing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, and
Thank you for being a
calling
part of Spotlight Over the City.
Yes. So have a great evening, Nikole.
You as well.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye. All right, you all, that was really good and informative. If you don't know, do your homework. Like we said, look up New York Times Project 1619 and get some history. It's really interesting and good information.
It is.
Yeah, so coming up after this next commercial break, we have the lovely, amazing Tressa Azarel in the building. Y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll be right back. Spotlight Over the City.